Today in class we worked on one-step equations. So just as a quick review of what that was, it was basically stuff like x plus 5 equals 10. And put up an easy problem that I know that most of you guys can do. We talked about how you need to show your work in 3 steps. First, you copy the problem to your paper. You always do that when you're doing these equations. They always need to be on your paper. Then you show the inverse. And remember, inverse is just kind of a fancy word for opposite in this sense. So opposite. You do the opposite operation. Sorry, I'm running together there. So we're going to say, we need to go both sides are equal sign and say, well, with the x, there's a plus 5. What's the opposite of adding a positive 5? Well, that would be adding a negative 5. So we're going to put minus 5 on both sides. Which leaves us with x, because positive 5 plus negative 5 cancels and makes 0. So x is left. 10 plus negative 5, or 10 minus 5 is 5. And we can check it. If you take this 5 and put it in, so we're going to take this 5 and replace the x with 5, and add the 5 that was already there. If we did it right, we should get this 10. So let's add them and see. 10 equals 10. All right. So that was really for you to watch. Now start taking notes at this point. It's fine if you already took notes. That's actually good. So let's put up a couple of problems. Now this is a 2-step equation, so it's sort of extension of what we've just talked about. We go to this pretty quickly because really what we teach in 7th grade is 2-step equations like this. 1 step was actually a 6th grade standard, and I believe you do that some in 5th grade. So we can't spend a lot of time on it, unfortunately, but that we review it for a day or so to give you sort of the basis, the background, and so we need to jump right into this. And this is going to be confusing. You're not going to get this from watching just the video. You're going to have to work through it, practice, and get help from other people and from me. So just know that if you're confused, that's fine. Just write down the notes, pay attention, do your best to get as much as you can, and then we're going to practice this and practice this and practice this. Believe me, this confuses everyone at first. So I like to draw a line straight down the middle at the equal sign. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now, the way that you do these, I'm going to give you the long definition first. It's going to be a little more confusing, but helpful later if you get it. And then I'll give you just a short, quick, easy thing to remember. Really what you're doing to solve these, since you're kind of taking it apart, if we were adding these and we knew what x was, we would use the order of operations. We would multiply, then add. But since you're actually trying to get rid of this 10, trying to get rid of it, and since you're trying to get rid of this 2, basically get the x by itself, remember that's your goal, just like with 1-step equations, you actually need to unpack this, which means you're going to use the opposite of the order of operations. So we use the reverse order of operations. So if you think, you usually start with parentheses, then exponents, then multiply, divide, then add and subtract. You don't have to write this. Just write what I do with the problem, unless you just really want to. What we're going to do is start down here because we're basically taking it apart, and then we work up. It's kind of like if you want to put on your shoe, you have to tie it. There's a certain way you do that. But taking it off, you don't tie your shoe again. You untie it. You go backwards. And that's what we're doing here. We're untying this. We're going backwards. We're starting with the end and going up. So if that didn't make sense, and it doesn't for a lot of people at first, it's going to be one of those things where you're in high school and you're going to, oh, I get that. Here's another way to do it. What I do is I'll find the variable, in this case an x, and I box in the variable and anything that's really like right there touching it, in this case a 2. Now you look on this side. What number is on this side that's not in this box? Well, that'd be plus 10. And if we're going to reverse order operations, we see that we need to start with that. So we deal with whatever's not in the box first. In this case, we deal with the plus 10. So we're going to copy our problem. We show our inverse. And that would be subtracting 10. And remember, we need to balance our equation, so we're going to subtract 10 from this side as well. Positive 10 plus negative 10 makes 0, so that goes away, just like we talked about in class. And then we're left with 2x over here, so that's different. And then 26 minus 10, or 26 plus negative 10 is 16. And we call this two-step because we're not really done yet. On the one steps, we'd be done at this point, but you notice there's still a 2 with this x. So we got to do one more step. We actually have to show the inverse again, which CIIA, it doesn't sound as cool, but that's what we have to do. So what we're going to do is the inverse, this time of multiplication, which is division. We're going to divide, once again, balancing our equation, both sides by 2. Well, this makes 1, which cancels. Now we'll write our answer. On this side, once we cancel there, we have an x. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So it looks like this should be 8, and we can check it. And I would advise you to check these constantly. Instead of x, let's put in our 8. Once again, we're just checking to see if we did it right. If this is right, we should get a 16. So let's see. Or sorry, should get a 26. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 10. 16 plus 10 is 26. So we did it right. So there's one example. Now here's another example, and once again we're going to keep doing that reverse order of operations. So in order of operations we divide first, do this last, subtract. So if we're going reverse we have to deal with subtraction, then division. And once again, if you didn't get that, I'm just going to try to simplify it for you. Let's draw our line so we know where our dividing point. This is our, like on the scale we looked at, this would be our fulcrum, this would be the middle of it. So once again, you're going to look at your variable, and what's pretty much there, right there with it, kind of touching it, would be divided by 8. So we're going to box all this in. Then we look at this and say, well, what's the inverse of minusing 5, subtracting 5? Would be adding 5. So we do that first, whatever's not touching the variable. Add 5 to both sides, just like that. That cancels, and we're left over here with y over 8. Y over 8, and that equals 26 plus 5 would be 31, I believe. Now we're going to look here again and say, well, this is division this time, and the inverse of division is multiplication. So in this case, I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. So here's step 2. So we copied our problem, we showed one inverse, and now we're showing our second inverse. Since it's a two-step, there are 2 inverses. Well, times 8 and divided by 8, that cancels out. It makes just a y. And 31 times 8, let's see, 1 times 8 would be 24, I believe is 248. And you could check it. Instead of y, we're going to put in 248. Divide by 8 and subtract 5. And if we do it right, we should get this 26 that we started with. So do 248 divided by 8, that looks like it's 31. Minus 5 is 26. So we have the right answer. We checked it and it worked out. So I'm going to cut it off at those 2 problems. I don't think it'll do a lot of good to keep doing them right here. This was just an introduction. This is a very difficult concept. Make sure you have these notes with you when you come to class. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice this. I'm going to go over some more examples with you, and you're going to get to see it and see it and see it and practice it, because that's how you're going to learn it. It's not going to be by continuing to copy these examples. So expect when we get to class to have some more examples. Be ready to ask questions and be ready to practice until you get this right.